The chandeliers in the Harrington ballroom glistened like frozen stars, their light casting a golden glow over the sea of New York's elite. Elizabeth Harrington stood at the center of it all, a vision of poised authority in a midnight blue gown, every detail of her appearance curated to perfection. Her icy blue eyes swept across the room, catching whispers of admiration and envy alike. To the world, she was a titan, an unshakable force in the corporate jungle. To her daughter, Sophia, she was a storm waiting to strike. Sophia Harrington leaned against a marble pillar, her sequined dress shimmering under the cascading lights. She twirled a flute of champagne in her hand, more interested in the way the bubbles danced than in the socialites around her. Her auburn curls framed her face, and her emerald green eyes held a spark of defiance, a glimmer of rebellion she'd nurtured since childhood. This world of glitz and power was Elizabeth's playground, not hers. "You're not hiding well, Sophia," came a smooth voice. Sophia looked up to see her mother approaching, her heels clicking against the marble floor with precision. "Tonight isn't about standing in corners. You represent the Harrington legacy, whether you like it or not." Sophia's lips curled into a wry smile. "The Harrington legacy? Right. Forgive me for not basking in its glory." Elizabeth's expression tightened. She gestured for Sophia to follow her toward the grand staircase. The crowd's attention shifted as Elizabeth ascended, her presence commanding silence. At the top, she turned to face the gathering, Sophia reluctantly by her side. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elizabeth began, her voice slicing through the room. "Tonight is a celebration of tradition, of values, and of the future. The Harrington family has always stood for excellence, and I am proud to announce the next step in securing our legacy." Sophia's stomach churned. She glanced at her mother, suspicion blooming in her chest. "As many of you know," Elizabeth continued, "my daughter Sophia has always been an integral part of our family's vision. And now she will embark on the most important journey of her life." She turned to Sophia, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Sophia will be married within the year." The room erupted in applause. Sophia froze, the words echoing in her ears like a thunderclap. "What are you doing?" she hissed through clenched teeth. Elizabeth's gaze didn't waver. "Securing your future." Sophia forced a smile as the crowd's eyes bore into her, but her voice was low and venomous. "We'll talk about this later." "Of course," Elizabeth said, her tone dripping with feigned sweetness. The applause subsided, and Elizabeth delivered the final blow. "I am pleased to announce that her fiancé will be none other than Elliot Carson, a man of remarkable talent and integrity." Sophia's heart plummeted. She didn't know who Elliot Carson was, but she was certain of one thing: her life was no longer her own. As the guests began murmuring with excitement, Sophia turned and stormed down the stairs, champagne spilling from her glass as she pushed past bewildered onlookers. She burst through the ballroom doors into the cool night air, her mind a whirlwind of anger and confusion. Elizabeth followed, her demeanor icy as ever. "Sophia, don't make a scene. This is bigger than you." "Bigger than me?" Sophia snapped, spinning to face her. "You're treating me like a chess piece in one of your corporate deals. Who is this Elliot Carson, and what makes you think I'll go along with this insanity?" Elizabeth stepped closer, her voice cold and commanding. "You'll do it, because the Harrington fortune depends on it. Your father's will stipulates that you must be married to inherit, and I won't let you squander everything he worked for." Sophia's jaw clenched. "And if I refuse?" Elizabeth's lips curved into a thin smile. "If you refuse, the fortune is mine, and you'll be left with nothing." For a moment, Sophia was too stunned to respond. Then, with a voice trembling with fury, she said, "You think you can control me with money? You've underestimated me, Mother." Elizabeth's smile didn't falter. "You've always had a flair for dramatics. But remember, Sophia, rebellion has its limits." Sophia stared at her mother, the woman who had shaped her life with iron hands, and vowed silently that she wouldn't let her win. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her heart pounding with defiance. As she disappeared into the night, Elizabeth remained behind, her expression unreadable. In her world, power was everything, and she wasn't about to lose it. The sharp hiss of an aerosol filled the air as Elliot Carson stepped back, examining the mural coming to life before him. The vibrant strokes of color, depicting a soaring phoenix against a backdrop of Brooklyn's iconic skyline, seemed almost defiant as they stretched across the concrete wall. The morning sun bathed the neighborhood in a soft glow, but Elliot's mind was clouded with worry. His family's art gallery, once a cherished cornerstone of the community, was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. This mural was his latest attempt to remind people of the beauty art could bring, even in the toughest of times. "Elliot, you've got paint on your face again," a voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts. He turned to see his younger sister, Mia, standing by with a steaming cup of coffee. Her bright smile was a stark contrast to the exhaustion etched on her face. She'd been helping manage the gallery since their father passed away, doing everything she could to keep it afloat. "Thanks," Elliot said, taking the cup and rubbing at the paint smudge on his cheek. "Don't work yourself to death," Mia said, concern lacing her tone. "We'll figure something out." Elliot forced a smile, but his gut told him otherwise. The gallery was more than just a business. It was their family's legacy. And no amount of optimism could change the fact that their debts were piling up faster than they could manage. As if on cue, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and frowned at the unfamiliar number. "Hello," he answered hesitantly. "Mr. Carson, this is Elizabeth Harrington," came a crisp, authoritative voice. "I believe we have some matters to discuss." Elliot's brow furrowed. Elizabeth Harrington. The name was vaguely familiar, conjuring images of headlines about a powerful New York business mogul. But what could she possibly want with him? I think you've got the wrong number," Elliot said, ready to hang up. "I assure you I do not," Elizabeth replied, her tone unyielding. "Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Carson. I've been following your work, and I believe we can help each other." Elliot's curiosity was piqued despite himself. "I'm listening." "Meet me at my office tomorrow morning," Elizabeth continued. "I'll have my assistant send you the address. This is a matter of urgency, so I trust you won't waste my time." The call ended before Elliot could respond. He stared at the phone, baffled. What kind of deal could someone like Elizabeth Harrington want to strike with a struggling artist? The following morning, Elliot found himself standing in front of a towering glass building in Manhattan, feeling distinctly out of place in his paint-streaked jeans and worn leather jacket. The stark contrast between his Brooklyn neighborhood and this gleaming skyscraper was unnerving, but he swallowed his discomfort and stepped inside. Elizabeth's assistant, a woman with a polished demeanor and an unnerving efficiency, escorted him to a lavish office overlooking the city. Elizabeth sat behind a massive mahogany desk, her presence commanding. She didn't rise to greet him, instead gesturing for him to sit. "Mr. Carson," she began, her voice as sharp as the lines of her tailored suit. "I'll get straight to the point. You're in debt, are you not?" Elliot stiffened. "That's none of your business." Elizabeth's smile was cold. "Let's not waste time pretending. Your family's gallery is on the verge of collapse. I can help you save it. Elliot's jaw tightened. What's the catch? Elizabeth leaned forward, her icy gaze locking onto his. I need you to marry my daughter, Sophia. Elliot blinked, certain he'd misheard. Excuse me? It's quite simple, Elizabeth said smoothly. Sophia must marry within the year to inherit the Harrington fortune. I've chosen you as her fiancé. Elliot let out a disbelieving laugh. This has to be some kind of joke. I assure you it's not, Elizabeth replied. In exchange, I'll pay off your debts and provide the funds needed to revitalize your gallery. Think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. Elliot shook his head, incredulous. And what does Sophia think about this? She'll comply, Elizabeth said coolly. She knows what's at stake. Elliot stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. I'm not some puppet you can pull strings on. Find someone else. He turned to leave, but Elizabeth's next words stopped him cold. Walk away. And your family loses everything? She said, her tone icy. This is your chance to secure their future. Don't be foolish. Elliot clenched his fists, the weight of her words sinking in. He thought of Mia, of the gallery their father had poured his soul into, and of the mounting bills he couldn't ignore. The idea of aligning himself with someone like Elizabeth made his skin crawl. But what choice did he have? Fine, he said finally, his voice taut with anger. I'll do it. But don't expect me to play by your rules. Elizabeth's smile returned, cold and calculating. Welcome to the Harrington family, Mr. Carson. That evening, Elliot returned to Brooklyn, the deal weighing heavily on his mind. He sat in the dimly lit gallery, staring at the paintings that lined the walls. Each one told a story of struggle and triumph, of finding beauty in adversity. But now, his own story felt like it was slipping out of his control. As he closed up for the night, Mia approached him, her expression concerned. You've been quiet since you got back. Everything okay? Elliot forced a smile. Just a lot on my mind. Mia didn't press, but her worry was evident. As she walked away, Elliot resolved that if he was going to do this, he'd find a way to protect his family without losing himself in the process. Sophia Harrington stood at the massive floor-to-ceiling window of her mother's opulent penthouse, staring out at the bustling New York City skyline. The city, alive with lights and motion, mirrored the turmoil inside her. Her jaw tightened as she clutched the engagement announcement in her hand, its elegant gold embossing a cruel contrast to the prison it represented. How dare she? Sophia muttered under her breath. Her green eyes, usually sparkling with a free-spirited charm, now burned with anger. The ultimatum her mother had dropped at the gala felt like a slap in the face. Marry a man she had never met, all for the sake of an inheritance she didn't even want. It was beyond absurd. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her mother's voice echoing from the living room. Sophia, he'll be here soon. Elizabeth Harrington called, her tone commanding as always. I expect you to behave. Sophia turned away from the window, her silk robe billowing as she stormed into the room. Behave? You've already decided my entire future without consulting me? And you want me to play nice? Elizabeth, perched gracefully on a velvet chaise, met her daughter's fiery gaze with icy indifference. This isn't up for debate, Sophia. You have a responsibility to this family. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. A responsibility? Since when does being your pawn count as a responsibility? The sharp ding of the elevator's arrival cut through their argument. Elizabeth stood, smoothing her perfectly tailored suit. He's here. Sophia crossed her arms, her defiance radiating from every inch of her posture. This should be good, she muttered, as the elevator doors slid open. Elliot Carson stepped into the penthouse, his dark hair slightly disheveled, and his leather jacket at odds with the room's pristine decor. His piercing blue eyes swept across the space before landing on Sophia. Their gazes locked, and for a moment, the tension in the room was palpable. "You must be Sophia," Elliot said, his voice steady but edged with wariness. He extended a hand, his rough fingers betraying his life of hard work. Sophia eyed him critically, her lips curving into a sarcastic smile. "And you must be the artist my mother plucked from obscurity." Elliot smirked, lowering his hand. "And here, I thought this was going to be awkward." Elizabeth cleared her throat, her patience visibly thinning. "Let's sit. We have much to discuss." The dinner table was a battlefield. Sophia sat across from Elliot, her movements deliberately graceful as she toyed with her fork. Elizabeth presided at the head of the table, her tone clipped and efficient as she outlined the engagement plan. "You'll announce your engagement next week," Elizabeth began, her eyes darting between them. "Sophia, you'll attend the charity luncheon with Elliot. The press will be there, so I expect you to act accordingly." Sophia leaned back in her chair, her expression laced with sarcasm. "Oh, don't worry, Mother. I'll put on a dazzling performance." Elliot glanced at her, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Glad to know I won't have to carry the act alone." Sophia shot him a withering look. "Don't get comfortable. This arrangement is temporary." "Trust me," Elliot replied, his tone equally sharp. "I'm counting the days." Elizabeth ignored their exchange, focusing instead on the meticulously prepared folder in front of her. "Sophia, you'll move into the brownstone tomorrow. It's already been prepared." "Move in?" Sophia echoed, her voice rising. "Are you out of your mind?" Elizabeth's gaze hardened. "It's necessary for appearances. You'll both learn to adapt." Elliot leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "And what about my say in all this?" "You gave up your say the moment you agreed to my terms," Elizabeth snapped, her composure cracking for the first time. "Don't forget what's at stake for you, Mr. Carson." Elliot's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, the weight of Elizabeth's control pressing down on them. Later that evening, Sophia stormed into her bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She paced the room, her anger simmering just below the surface. How could her mother manipulate her life so completely? And how could Elliot, a man who claimed to despise this arrangement as much as she did, still agree to it? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She opened it to find Anna, the family's long-serving housekeeper, holding a small tray with a cup of chamomile tea. "I thought you might need this, Mrs. Sophia," Anna said softly, her kind eyes filled with concern. Sophia sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Thanks, Anna. I don't know how you've put up with my mother all these years." Anna smiled gently. "I've seen her drive many people to their breaking point, but I've also seen you stand up to her more than anyone else. Don't lose that spirit." Sophia managed a small smile as Anna left the room. She sipped the tea, her mind churning with ways to sabotage the engagement and regain control of her life. Across the city, Elliot sat in his cramped apartment, sketching aimlessly in a worn notebook. His thoughts were a chaotic mix of frustration and guilt. Agreeing to Elizabeth's deal had felt like a betrayal of everything he stood for, but the alternative, watching his family's gallery crumble, had been unthinkable. His sister Mia entered the room, a bowl of instant noodles in hand. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elliot groaned, tossing the notebook aside. "More like I've signed a deal with the devil." Mia frowned, concern etched on her face. "Is it really that bad?" Elliot ran a hand through his hair. Worse, she's controlling everything, Mia, even where I live. Mia sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. Then don't let her win. Find a way to play the game without losing yourself. Elliot nodded, her words striking a chord. If he was going to survive this arrangement, he'd have to fight back in his own way. The next morning, Sophia arrived at the brownstone with her designer luggage in tow. Her expression, a mix of disdain and defiance. Elliot stood on the steps, his hands in his pockets, watching her approach. "Welcome to your new home," he said dryly. Sophia gave him a tight smile. "Don't get used to it." As they entered the house, their clashing personalities became immediately evident. Sophia recoiled at the modest decor, while Elliot rolled his eyes at her exasperated comments about the lack of amenities. "This place has character," Elliot said, gesturing to the exposed brick walls. Sophia wrinkled her nose. "It smells like paint." "It's called charm," Elliot replied with a smirk. Sophia dropped her bags in the middle of the living room. "This arrangement might be my mother's idea, but that doesn't mean I have to like it." "Trust me," Elliot said, meeting her gaze. "Neither do I." The stage was set for Elizabeth Harrington's masterstroke, a glittering engagement announcement gala designed to project the perfect image of unity and sophistication. Held at a luxury ballroom in the heart of Manhattan, the event oozed with opulence. Golden chandeliers bathed the room in warm light, and walls draped in white silk bore intricate floral arrangements that smelled of imported lilies. A string quartet played softly in the corner, underscoring the air of exclusivity that Elizabeth so carefully curated. Sophia, standing at the edge of the crowd, felt like a puppet in her mother's meticulously staged theater. Her emerald green dress clung elegantly to her figure, but the tension in her posture betrayed her discomfort. She held a glass of champagne, untouched, while her eyes darted across the room, searching for a way out of the charade. "Try not to look so miserable." Elliot Carson's voice interrupted her thoughts. He appeared at her side, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, though the subtle defiance in his demeanor remained. "You'll ruin the illusion." Sophia turned to him, her lips curving into a wry smile. "Oh, forgive me for not basking in the glow of my own corporate fairy tale." Elliot chuckled, his gaze sweeping over the room. "Your mother's outdone herself. It's like a who's who of people I'll never care to know." Before Sophia could retort, Elizabeth's voice rang out, commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have a moment of your time." The crowd hushed, turning toward the grand staircase where Elizabeth stood, flanked by two crystal candelabras. Her practiced smile radiated authority as she gestured for Sophia and Elliot to join her. Sophia hesitated, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet as she reluctantly made her way to the staircase. Elliot followed, his steps slower, more deliberate, as if bracing himself for what was to come. Elizabeth's voice was smooth and assured. "Tonight, we celebrate not only the future of Harrington Enterprises, but also a union that embodies strength, resilience, and partnership. My daughter, Sophia, and the exceptionally talented Mr. Elliot Carson." Applause erupted, but Sophia's stomach churned. She forced a smile, her hand tightening on the railing. Beside her, Elliot maintained his calm facade, though she noticed the way his jaw tensed as Elizabeth continued her speech. After the announcement, Sophia and Elliot were immediately swarmed by well-wishers and curious guests. Sophia felt her face ache from the forced smiles and shallow pleasantries. "I've never seen you so radiant," cooed Margot Callahan, one of Elizabeth's closest allies in the social circuit. Her saccharine tone made Sophia's skin crawl. And Mr. Carson. What an interesting choice. You must tell me, what's it like to join such a distinguished family? Elliot raised an eyebrow, his voice dry. Distinguished is one word for it. Sophia bit back a laugh, barely managing to disguise it with a sip of champagne. Margot, however, looked momentarily stunned, her painted smile faltering. Elizabeth appeared at Sophia's side, her expression warning. Sophia, dear, perhaps you and Elliot should greet the members of the press. They're eager for a quote. Oh, I'm sure they are, Sophia said, her voice laced with sarcasm. Elliot leaned in slightly. Lead the way, darling, he said, his tone dripping with mock affection. The reporters were relentless, their cameras flashing as they hurled questions at the couple. How did you two meet? What's the wedding theme? Mr. Carson, how does it feel to marry into such a powerful family? Sophia stepped forward, her voice calm but sharp. We're very excited to begin this next chapter together. Elliot and I share a mutual respect and admiration. Elliot, catching her cue, added with a sly grin, and a shared interest in making the most out of unexpected opportunities. The room erupted in laughter, though Sophia could sense Elizabeth's icy glare from across the room. The evening dragged on, and Sophia found herself enduring endless conversations with Elizabeth's network of elites. Their polished facades and subtle condescension tested her patience. At one point, she overheard a particularly smug guest making a snide remark about Elliot's background. A muralist. How quaint. I suppose every family needs a charity case. Before Sophia could intervene, Elliot stepped forward. Quaint, maybe, he said evenly, but at least my work has meaning. The guest flushed, stammering an apology before retreating. Sophia looked at Elliot, surprised. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Elliot shrugged. Call it a moment of weakness. The gala finally ended, and Sophia retreated to the penthouse, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She barely had time to pour herself a glass of wine before Elizabeth entered, her expression stormy. That performance was unacceptable, Elizabeth snapped. Do you realize how many influential people were watching you tonight? Sophia turned, her gaze defiant. Oh, I'm sorry, Mother. Did I not sell the fantasy well enough for you? Elizabeth's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You may think this is a game, Sophia, but it's not. If you continue to undermine me, there will be consequences. Sophia set down her glass, her eyes blazing. You've already taken control of my life, Mother. What more could you possibly do? Elizabeth's cold smile sent a chill down Sophia's spine. Don't test me. Meanwhile, Elliot returned to his Brooklyn studio, peeling off his suit jacket and loosening his tie. The quiet hum of the city outside was a stark contrast to the suffocating luxury of the gala. He sat on his worn couch, staring at a half-finished mural on the wall. Mia, his sister, entered with a steaming mug of tea. Rough night? Elliot sighed. You could say that. Mia sat beside him, studying his expression. Why are you doing this, Elliot? Is it really worth it? Elliot ran a hand through his hair. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. Mia placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Whatever happens, don't lose yourself in her world. You're better than that. Elliot nodded, her words resonating. He wasn't sure how he'd navigate this mess. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let Elizabeth Harrington define him. The sound of wheels clattering over uneven cobblestones echoed down the quiet Brooklyn street as Sophia Harrington's designer luggage followed her begrudgingly into the brownstone she was now forced to call home. She stood at the door, staring up at the three-story structure with a mix of disdain and disbelief. Its aged brick facade and ivy-covered walls seemed charming at a glance, but to Sophia, it screamed unrefined. Elliot Carson appeared at the top of the steps, holding the door open with a nonchalant expression. "Welcome to your new palace, Your Highness." Sophia shot him a sharp look as she ascended the steps in her heels, which clicked against the cracked stone. "Charming. Are you planning to roll out a red carpet next? Or is sarcasm your only service?" Elliot smirked, stepping aside to let her pass. "I thought I'd save the red carpet for our first paparazzi photo op. Wouldn't want to blow the budget on day one." The interior was worse than she had anticipated. The hardwood floors creaked ominously underfoot, and the faint smell of turpentine lingered in the air. Canvases leaned haphazardly against the walls, some half-finished, others splattered with bold streaks of paint. The living room was a far cry from the polished elegance of the Harrington penthouse. Instead, it exuded a chaotic creativity that both irritated and intrigued her. "Is this your idea of decor?" Sophia asked, gesturing toward a particularly abstract painting hanging crookedly on the wall. "It's called art," Elliot replied, crossing his arms. "Something you might want to familiarize yourself with while you're here." The first few days of living together were a test of patience for both Sophia and Elliot. Their clashing lifestyles became apparent almost immediately. Sophia meticulously organized the kitchen cabinets, only to find Elliot had crammed them full of mismatched coffee mugs and paint-stained jars. Her attempt to establish a cleaning schedule was met with a raised eyebrow and a dismissive "good luck with that." Elliot, on the other hand, was baffled by Sophia's insistence on ordering imported mineral water and her refusal to touch the neighborhood coffee shop's offerings. "Is this a marriage or a hostage situation?" he muttered as he watched her scrub her hands after touching a doorknob. Their shared disdain for the arrangement played out in passive-aggressive exchanges. Sophia blasted classical music at full volume while Elliot worked, and he retaliated by leaving his paint supplies scattered across the dining table. The brownstone became a battleground of wills, neither willing to concede. One evening, Sophia wandered into the studio, at the back of the house, her silk robe brushing against the floor. She had been searching for her phone charger, but instead, her gaze landed on a large mural Elliot had been working on. It depicted a vibrant cityscape, bursting with life and color, but a glaring smudge in the center caught her eye. Curiosity piqued, she reached out to touch it, only to realize too late that the paint was still wet. Her fingers left streaks across the canvas, and a gasp escaped her lips. "Are you kidding me?" Elliot's voice cut through the silence, startling her. He stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. Sophia turned to face him, guilt flashing across her face. I didn't mean to." "You ruined it," he snapped, striding toward the mural. His hands hovered over the damage, as if he could undo it through sheer willpower. Sophia's defenses kicked in. "Well, maybe you shouldn't leave your precious masterpieces lying around like a booby trap." Elliot groaned, dragging a hand through his hair. "Do you have any idea how long I've been working on this? This was supposed to be for the Midtown competition. The deadline is next week." Her irritation softened as she realized the weight of his frustration. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice quieter. "Let me help you fix it." He stared at her for a moment, skepticism etched into his features. "You? Help? Do you even know how to hold a paintbrush?" "I can learn," she said, surprising even herself with her sincerity. "If you'll let me." Over the next few days, Sophia threw herself into assisting Elliot with the mural. At first, her attempts were laughable. She accidentally knocked over a jar of paint, narrowly avoiding a full-scale disaster, and her initial brushstrokes resembled the chaotic scribbles of a child. But Elliot, to her surprise, showed patience. He guided her hand, demonstrating the technique with a mixture of exasperation and amusement. "You're holding it like a sword," he said, adjusting her grip. "It's a paintbrush, not a weapon." Sophia rolled her eyes, but followed his instructions. Slowly, she began to grasp the rhythm of the work, finding a strange sense of satisfaction in blending colors and layering textures. Their banter became less combative and more playful as they worked late into the night. Elliot learned something about Sophia during those hours in the studio. Beneath her polished exterior and sharp wit was a keen eye for detail and an unexpected knack for negotiation. When a gallery owner tried to lowball Elliot on a commission, Sophia stepped in, her voice smooth and commanding. "If you want a mediocre mural, feel free to find someone else," she said, her tone cutting. "But if you want something that will make people stop and admire, then you'll pay him what he's worth." The owner relented, and Elliot couldn't hide his surprise. "Where did that come from?" Sophia shrugged, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "I grew up watching my mother manipulate boardrooms. Guess I picked up a thing or two." As the days passed, the line between animosity and camaraderie blurred. Sophia and Elliot began to discover facets of each other that defied their initial judgments. One afternoon, Elliot found Sophia sitting on the stoop, sketching designs in a notebook. "What's that?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder. "Just an idea for a pop-up art show," she said, her tone guarded. "It's probably stupid." Elliot shook his head. "No, it's not bad. You've got an eye for this." Sophia looked up, surprised by the genuine compliment. "Thanks." Their fragile truce was tested when Elizabeth visited the brownstone unannounced. She swept into the house like a storm, her sharp eyes taking in the disarray with barely concealed disdain. "This is where you're living?" she said, her voice dripping with judgment. Sophia bristled. "Yes, Mother." "Welcome to the real world." Elizabeth's gaze shifted to Elliot. "I trust you're keeping up your end of the deal." Elliot's jaw tightened, but he remained composed. "I'm doing my best." As Elizabeth left, her parting words lingered in the air. "Remember, Sophia, you have everything to lose if this fails." That evening, Sophia and Elliot sat on the rooftop, the Brooklyn skyline stretching before them. The city lights reflected in their glasses of wine as they shared a rare moment of calm. "Do you ever feel like you're just playing a role in someone else's script?" Sophia asked, her voice soft. Elliot considered her words. "All the time. But maybe it's about rewriting the script." Sophia turned to him, a hint of admiration in her gaze. "Maybe you're right." For the first time since the arrangement began, they felt less like adversaries and more like reluctant allies. Neither knew where the journey would take them, but one thing was certain. They were in it together. It began with a single piece of paper, folded, yellowed at the edges, and tucked between the worn pages of an old sketchbook. Sophia hadn't intended to find it. She had been rifling through the dusty shelves of the brownstone's makeshift studio in search of a fresh notebook. Instead, she uncovered what appeared to be a letter, its faint cursive script barely legible. The address at the top was unmistakably her mother's company headquarters. Her brow furrowed as she unfolded the note. It detailed a series of business dealings, each entry marked with terse annotations and coded references. The content itself wasn't entirely clear, but the name that appeared repeatedly, Elliot Carson, was undeniable. A chill ran down her spine as she scanned the lines. It wasn't a simple marriage arrangement. There was more, and it involved both her mother's financial empire and Elliot's struggling family gallery. Elliot entered the room just as Sophia was slipping the letter back into its hiding place. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Looking for a notebook," she said quickly. She handed him the sketchbook, her expression carefully neutral. "I didn't know you had so many hidden treasures lying around." His eyes narrowed. "I'm not hiding anything, and that's not exactly a treasure." Sophia decided not to push the matter. For now. Over the next few days, Sophia's perspective shifted. She began to notice inconsistencies in her mother's behavior and patterns that now seemed too deliberate to be coincidence. Elizabeth's sudden insistence on this particular marriage partner, the urgency of the timeline, the heavy-handed control over every detail. It all felt orchestrated, yet the why eluded her. Why Elliot? Why now? Sophia started paying closer attention to the documents that arrived at the brownstone. Invoices, contracts, and art supplies were accompanied by subtle signs of her mother's influence. One shipping label bore the logo of Harrington Holdings. Another package came with a note signed by one of her mother's senior executives. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a picture, but it was still incomplete. One evening, after Elliot had fallen asleep on the couch, Sophia returned to the studio and reopened the sketchbook. This time, she read the letter in its entirety. A phrase jumped out at her: consolidating assets. It was followed by a mention of a prominent merger that her mother had been planning for months. The marriage wasn't just about controlling Sophia's future. It was about securing a financial advantage, one that apparently involved Elliot's family business. Her breath caught. If her mother's plan succeeded, it would mean not just manipulating her daughter's life, but potentially dismantling a legacy that had sustained Elliot's family for generations. Sophia realized she couldn't keep this to herself. Sophia chose her moment carefully. The next morning, she found Elliot working on a new mural, his hands steady as he added layers of vibrant color to a sprawling urban landscape. She approached slowly, holding the letter behind her back. "Elliot," she began, her voice soft. He turned, his expression guarded. "What is it?" "I need to talk to you about something," she said, holding out the letter. "I found this in one of the old sketchbooks. I think you need to see it." Elliot hesitated before taking the letter. As his eyes scanned the page, his jaw tightened. When he looked up, there was no mistaking the anger and betrayal in his gaze. "Where did you find this?" he demanded. "Buried in the studio," she replied. "I wasn't looking for it. It just appeared." Elliot let out a bitter laugh. "Appeared? That's convenient." "I'm not your enemy," Sophia said firmly. "I'm trying to figure out what's really going on. You have to believe me." Elliot stared at her for a long moment, before finally nodding. "Fine. Let's figure this out. Together." Over the next week, Sophia and Elliot worked side by side, piecing together the clues. They sifted through old files, interviewed gallery staff who had worked with Elliot's father, and even visited a former Harrington Holdings executive who had mysteriously retired the year before. The puzzle began to take shape. They discovered that Elliot's father had once owned several prime properties in Brooklyn, including the brownstone they now shared. Those properties had been collateralized years ago to finance his art gallery's expansion. When the gallery fell on hard times, those loans fell into Elizabeth Harrington's hands. She quietly acquired the debt, waiting for the right moment to call it in. Elliot's family hadn't realized the depth of their financial peril until it was too late. By the time they tried to renegotiate, Elizabeth had already set her sights on the brownstone, not for its real estate value, but for its strategic importance in her merger deal. The marriage to Sophia was the final piece. tying the Harrington name to a project that would triple the company's portfolio. As they unraveled the scheme, Sophia and Elliot found themselves growing closer. The sharp edges of their initial hostility began to soften. They bonded over late-night research sessions, shared frustrations, and the occasional sarcastic banter. Sophia saw a side of Elliot she hadn't noticed before. His unwavering commitment to his family's legacy, his quiet determination, and the genuine talent that poured out of him every time he picked up a brush. For his part, Elliot began to understand Sophia's struggles as well. She wasn't just the spoiled heiress he had once dismissed. She was intelligent, resourceful, and fiercely independent. Her defiance wasn't born out of entitlement, but out of a desire to forge her own path. Their discoveries left them with a choice. They could confront Elizabeth directly, risking her wrath and the potential collapse of the merger, or they could find a way to outmaneuver her. Sophia knew her mother well enough to anticipate her moves, but this would require a level of strategy she wasn't sure they could manage alone. "We need help," she said one evening, as they sat in the studio, surrounded by piles of documents. Elliot looked up from a ledger. "Help from who?" "A journalist," Sophia replied. "Someone who can bring this to light. If we expose her, we might be able to stop her." Elliot frowned. "And if we fail?" Sophia met his gaze. "Then at least we'll have tried." With that, they agreed to take the next step. They would gather the evidence, build their case, and prepare to confront Elizabeth. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was their resolve. For the first time they felt like a team, partners not just in circumstance, but in purpose. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gallery's cluttered floor. Elliot stood at his easel, adding the finishing strokes to a mural that stretched from ceiling to floor. The piece, inspired by the Brooklyn neighborhood he'd grown up in, depicted towering brownstones, bustling street markets, and children playing stickball on sidewalks. It was a world he knew intimately, a world that felt more distant with each passing year. As he worked, his thoughts drifted to his father. Marcus Carson had been a dreamer, a man who believed in the transformative power of art. He'd poured his heart into the family gallery, hosting local artists and mentoring young talents who might otherwise never have had a chance to showcase their work. But dreams don't pay bills. The gallery had struggled for years before finally collapsing under the weight of debt and dwindling patrons. "Elliot?" Sophia's voice startled him out of his reverie. She stood in the doorway holding a faded photograph. "I found this in one of the old storage boxes. Is this your father?" Elliot set down his brush and crossed the room. The photo was a black and white snapshot of Marcus standing in front of the gallery's original location. His smile was broad, his arms draped around two teenage boys, Elliot and his older brother Nathan. They were all covered in paint, beaming with pride as they posed in front of a freshly painted mural. "Yeah, that's him," Elliot said quietly, taking the picture from her. "That was the day we finished the Brooklyn Rising mural. My dad said it was a tribute to the city and the people who made it special." Sophia studied the image. "He looks so happy." "You all do." Elliot nodded, his gaze lingering on the photograph. He was. For a while, everything felt perfect, but it didn't last. The gallery started losing money, and when my mom passed away, things went downhill fast. My dad tried to keep it together, but he ended up taking loans just to stay afloat. That's when Elizabeth stepped in. Sophia's heart sank. "My mother?" Elliot's expression hardened. "She saw an opportunity and took it. She offered to buy out the debt, said it was a favor to help my family. But it wasn't a favor. She used it as leverage, and when we couldn't pay, She took everything. That's how she ended up with the brownstone. And now, she's trying to use me to seal some deal she's been cooking up for years. Sophia was silent, guilt gnawing at her. I didn't know. No reason you would, Elliot said, turning back to his mural. She kept it all quiet. I doubt even her closest friends knew what she was doing. Sophia hesitated before speaking. Elliot, I'm sorry for what she's done. I know it won't fix anything, but I want to help. Elliot glanced at her, his eyes softening. I know you do, and it's not your fault. But if we're going to stop her, we have to understand why she's doing this. That evening, they dug deeper into the records Sophia had unearthed. They examined old contracts, financial statements, and correspondences tied to both Harrington Holdings and the Carson family gallery. The threads began to weave a story. Elizabeth had targeted not just the gallery, but several small family-run businesses in Brooklyn. Each acquisition brought her closer to a larger prize, a lucrative merger with a real estate conglomerate poised to redevelop the neighborhood. This isn't just about money, Sophia said, scanning a set of emails between Elizabeth and a developer. She's creating a monopoly. If she can control this area, she'll have the leverage to dictate property values, construction contracts, everything. Elliot leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. She doesn't care who she hurts. My dad thought he was dealing with someone who believed in the arts, someone who wanted to support the community. Instead, she saw him as a stepping stone. Sophia's jaw tightened. Not you anymore. We're going to stop her. Over the next week, they pieced together a timeline. Marcus Carson had initially approached Harrington Holdings for a loan to expand the gallery. Elizabeth had offered favorable terms, knowing full well that the gallery's revenue wouldn't sustain the payments. When the inevitable default came, she swooped in and claimed the gallery's assets, including the brownstone and several adjacent properties. Each move was calculated, designed to amass a portfolio that would make her the linchpin in the real estate deal. This was never about art, Elliot said bitterly. She was playing the long game. Sophia nodded. But she underestimated one thing. What's that? You, she replied. She thought you'd take the deal and keep quiet. She didn't expect you to fight back. And now she didn't expect me to side with you. Sophia's resolve hardened. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose that went beyond defying her mother's expectations. This wasn't just about proving her independence. It was about righting a wrong and standing up for the values her late father had instilled in her. Fairness, integrity, and the courage to stand against corruption. We need more than evidence, Sophia said. We need allies, people who can back us up. Like who? Elliot asked. Community leaders, local artists, anyone who's been affected by her schemes, she replied. If we can show that she's hurt more than just your family, we'll have a stronger case. Elliot considered her words. You really think we can take her down? Sophia met his gaze, determination shining in her eyes. We have to try. The gallery's main hall buzzed with energy as the finishing touches came together. Overhead, lights glinted off polished wood floors, and vibrant canvases lined the walls, forming a vibrant tapestry of creativity. Elliot's heart thumped in his chest, a blend of anticipation and anxiety, as he paced in front of the largest piece he had ever created. A mural that stretched nearly 20 feet across the gallery's west wall. It depicted a symbolic battle between hope and corruption, its colors both haunting and uplifting, telling a story that echoed far beyond the paint. Sophia appeared beside him, adjusting her earrings and casting a critical eye over the scene. I think we're ready, she said. Elliot ran a hand through his hair. If you say so. It feels like I've been holding my breath since we started this. You're not alone, she replied. But tonight is about more than just you. It's about everyone who's been overshadowed by my mother's schemes. The doors swung wide, and the first wave of visitors trickled in. Art enthusiasts, neighborhood locals, and a handful of critics clutching their notepads. The gallery quickly filled with murmurs of appreciation, conversations overlapping, as guests gravitated toward the mural. A few faces turned toward the raised platform at the room's center, where Elliot would address the crowd. Sophia hovered nearby, keeping a watchful eye on the attendees. Among them was an unmistakable figure, Elizabeth Harrington. Her sharp, calculated presence sent a ripple through the room, and even those who didn't recognize her name felt the tension she carried. She stood near the entrance, a small, tight smile on her lips as she surveyed the space. I didn't expect her to show up, Elliot muttered to Sophia as he joined her near the platform. What's she doing here? Making her presence known, Sophia replied. But don't worry. This is your night, not hers. Elliot took a deep breath, steeling himself. The moment had come. As Elliot stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. He scanned the audience, his gaze landing briefly on Elizabeth before he turned his focus to the mural. He spoke of his journey, of his family's struggle to keep their gallery alive, and the role art played in giving people a voice. He described the mural's message, a reminder that no matter how deeply corruption ran, the power of community, creativity, and courage could shine through. The crowd listened intently, their applause growing louder with each word. By the time he finished, the energy in the room had shifted. The gallery felt less like a showroom and more like a rallying point, a symbol of resistance and hope. Elizabeth's smile had vanished, but just as the night seemed to reach its zenith, a commotion broke out near the back of the room. A well-known critic from a major publication stormed toward the mural, his voice cutting through the chatter. This is a disgrace, he declared. Derivative, uninspired, a childish attempt to mix politics and art. The crowd murmured in confusion. Sophia, who had been mingling nearby, immediately moved to Elliot's side. Something's not right, she whispered. He's not even looking at the pieces. It's almost as if... Her words trailed off as she noticed Elizabeth quietly slipping out the door. That critic's been paid off, Sophia concluded. She's trying to discredit you. Elliot's jaw tightened. Not tonight. Before Elliot could respond, a middle-aged man stepped forward, one of the local artists who had contributed to the exhibit. I know who you are, he said, pointing at the critic, and I know who sent you. But we're not going to let someone like you ruin this. This gallery stands for all of us. Other attendees began to speak up, defending Elliot's work and calling out the critic's lack of integrity. The crowd rallied around Elliot, their collective voice drowning out the critic's insults. Several guests pulled out their phones to record the scene, turning the tables on the saboteur. As the critic slinked away, the gallery erupted in applause. Elliot felt a surge of gratitude and determination. The community had his back. This wasn't just his fight, it was theirs. Later that evening, when the crowd had thinned and the gallery fell into a comfortable hum of quiet conversations, Elliot and Sophia sat together near the mural. The colors of the painting seemed to glow under the dimmed lights, a testament to the resilience and strength it represented. That didn't go the way she planned, Elliot said, a small smile breaking through the tension. No, it didn't, Sophia replied. It's a start, but we're not finished. Elliot nodded. No, we're not. But after tonight, I feel like we might actually have a chance. The city skyline stretched before them, as Sophia and Elliot sat at their modest kitchen table. A stack of papers covered the surface, their edges dog-eared and smudged with notes scribbled in haste. Each document was a piece of the puzzle, exposing Elizabeth Harrington's intricate web of manipulation. Sophia leaned forward, her gaze intense. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said. "It's about everyone she's exploited to get where she is." Elliot nodded, his hands clasped tightly. "So, what's the next step?" Sophia's lips tightened into a determined line. "We go public." The morning was spent poring over the evidence, bank statements, email correspondence, and testimonies from former employees, all pointed to Elizabeth's corrupt practices. Among the most damning pieces was a trail of financial transactions linking her to a company notorious for unethical business dealings. Sophia dialed the number of investigative journalist Kara Mitchell, whose reputation for exposing high-profile corruption preceded her. "We have something big," Sophia said, her voice steady, "something the public needs to know." Within hours, Kara arrived at their brownstone, her notepad ready and her questions sharp. Sophia laid everything out, recounting years of her mother's coercion and deceit. As they spoke, Kara's pen flew across the page. "This story will shake the foundations of New York's elite," Kara said. "But you need to be ready. Once we publish, there's no turning back." As the publication date loomed, tension filled the air. Sophia and Elliot found themselves drawn closer together, their shared goal strengthening their bond. Late one evening, Sophia voiced her fears. "What if this backfires?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if she finds a way to twist this against us?" Elliot took her hands in his calloused fingers warm against hers. "She's been twisting things her whole life. This time, we're taking control of the narrative. We're not just reacting to her games anymore. We're ending them." When Kara's article finally dropped, it spread like wildfire. Headlines splashed across every major outlet. "Harrington Empire built on deception." "Exclusive, Sophia Harrington speaks out against corruption." The exposé detailed Elizabeth's manipulation of corporate takeovers, her underhanded tactics in securing deals, and her betrayal of even her closest allies. It wasn't just a story. It was a bombshell. Social media exploded with reactions. Public opinion quickly turned against Elizabeth, her name becoming synonymous with greed and corruption. Former associates distanced themselves, and her empire began to show cracks. But Elizabeth Harrington wasn't one to go down without a fight. 2 days after the article's release, Sophia received a legal notice. Elizabeth was suing for defamation, claiming the allegations were baseless and harmful to her reputation. The lawsuit made headlines, turning the media frenzy into a full-blown spectacle. "She's trying to silence us," Sophia said, pacing the living room. "This is her way of deflecting." Elliot watched her with a calm resolve. "Then we fight back. We have the truth on our side." Knowing they couldn't do it alone, Sophia and Elliot reached out to key allies. They enlisted the help of Grace Whitmore, a seasoned corporate attorney known for taking on powerful adversaries. Grace's confidence was infectious. "Elizabeth's case is built on intimidation, not facts," Grace said during their first meeting. "We'll dismantle it piece by piece." Meanwhile, Kara Mitchell continued to publish follow-up articles, keeping public interest alive. Community support poured in, from letters of encouragement to offers of financial backing for their legal fees. Amid the chaos, Sophia stumbled upon a letter tucked inside an old book in her father's study. The faded handwriting was unmistakably her father's. It was addressed to Sophia, dated just weeks before his death. The letter detailed his growing concerns about Elizabeth's influence over the family business. "I fear for the legacy I've built," it read. "If you ever find this, know that my trust lies in you to restore what's been lost." Sophia's hands trembled as she read the final line. "Never let her control your destiny." Armed with her father's words, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The trial began on a brisk autumn morning. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, their cameras flashing, as Sophia and Elliot walked in hand. Elizabeth sat at the plaintiff's table, her icy demeanor intact. Grace opened with a powerful statement, emphasizing the truth behind the allegations and the evidence to support them. Elizabeth's team attempted to discredit Sophia, painting her as a bitter daughter seeking revenge. The turning point came when Kara Mitchell took the stand. Her testimony, backed by indisputable evidence, left little room for doubt. Grace followed with a scathing cross-examination of Elizabeth, exposing contradictions in her claims. After days of tense deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. The court ruled in favor of Sophia and Elliot. The defamation case was dismissed, and Elizabeth was ordered to pay legal fees. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters erupted into cheers. Sophia and Elliot embraced, the weight of the battle finally lifting. "We did it," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "No," Elliot replied, his voice filled with pride. "You did it." The fallout from the trial was immediate. Elizabeth's remaining allies abandoned her, and her empire crumbled under the weight of her tarnished reputation. Meanwhile, Sophia and Elliot's story became a symbol of resilience and justice. The couple used the momentum to further their initiatives. Elliot's gallery flourished, hosting exhibits that highlighted underrepresented artists. Sophia launched a foundation in her father's name, dedicated to ethical business practices and community empowerment. One quiet evening, Sophia and Elliot returned to the mural that had started it all. The vibrant colors seemed even more alive, a testament to the journey they had endured. "I never imagined we'd come this far," Sophia said, her voice soft. Elliot smiled, his hand resting on her shoulder. "And we're just getting started." They stood in silence, the mural's light casting shadows that danced around them, a reminder of the battles they had fought and the future they were building together. The courtroom's echoes of the verdict had barely faded when Elizabeth Harrington's resolve hardened. Her carefully curated empire, once untouchable, was crumbling before her eyes. Seated in the dim light of her sprawling penthouse, she stared out at the Manhattan skyline, her hands clenched tightly around a glass of wine. "They think they've won," she muttered, her voice sharp with venom. "But I'm not done." Elizabeth's first move was swift and strategic. Within days of the verdict, she instructed her remaining allies to find any loose threads that could be pulled to discredit Sophia and Elliot further. Her lawyers filed appeals, not in the hope of winning, but to prolong the legal battle and drain their resources. "Make it messy," Elizabeth told her attorney during a late-night call. "If they want war, they'll get it." Sophia received the first blow. In the form of a summons, Elizabeth had leveraged a loophole to accuse her of mishandling the inheritance she had recently secured, claiming it was misused to fund Elliot's growing art gallery. Elliot, too, faced repercussions. Anonymous complaints were filed against his gallery, resulting in surprise inspections and fines for minor infractions. The local press, likely tipped off by Elizabeth's team, began running stories, questioning the legitimacy of his rapid success. Sophia read the latest headline aloud, her frustration evident. "Rising artist or opportunist? Critics question Carson's ties to Harrington's scandal." Elliot clenched his jaw. "She's not going to stop, is she?" "No." Sophia said, her voice steady. But neither are we. While the legal battles raged, the court of public opinion became another battlefield. Social media lit up with debates about whether Sophia and Elliot were heroes or merely opportunists. Supporters rallied to their defense, but detractors, likely orchestrated by Elizabeth's PR team, cast doubt. One evening, Sophia and Elliot hosted a press conference to address the allegations. Standing side by side, they faced the cameras with unwavering determination. "This isn't just about us," Sophia began, her voice clear and firm. "It's about standing up to manipulation and corruption. My mother may have resources, but we have the truth." Elliot followed, his tone earnest. "Art is about honesty, about reflecting life as it is. This gallery was built not on scandal, but on community and passion. We'll prove that, no matter how long it takes." Their authenticity struck a chord. By the end of the week, the tide began to shift, with more articles praising their resilience and highlighting Elizabeth's questionable tactics. The appeal hearings were a spectacle. Elizabeth's legal team, bolstered by a few remaining loyalists, attempted to paint Sophia and Elliot as reckless and entitled. They brought up Sophia's past as a rebellious socialite, showcasing her old social media posts to suggest she was unfit to manage her inheritance. Grace Whitmore, their sharp and unflinching attorney, countered with undeniable evidence of Elizabeth's manipulation. She played a recording of a conversation between Elizabeth and one of her associates, where Elizabeth admitted to orchestrating false complaints against Elliot's gallery. The courtroom fell silent as the recording ended, the weight of Elizabeth's schemes laid bare. The trial brought unexpected witnesses to the stand. Elizabeth's estranged cousin, Robert Harrington, testified against her, revealing years of shady business dealings he had witnessed. His testimony was a turning point, solidifying the case against her. "I stayed silent for too long," Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. "But Sophia and Elliot's courage inspired me to finally speak up." Elizabeth's calm exterior began to crack. As she listened to Robert's testimony, her jaw tightened and her hands clenched at the table. The stress of the trial weighed heavily on Sophia and Elliot's relationship. Late nights were spent arguing over strategies, their exhaustion amplifying small disagreements. One evening, after an especially heated argument, Sophia retreated to the brownstone's rooftop. Elliot found her there, staring at the city lights. "I'm scared, Elliot," she admitted, her voice trembling. "What if this fight costs us everything?" Elliot sat beside her, his hand brushing hers. "We've already faced so much. We'll face this too. Together." The turning point came from an unexpected source. One of Elizabeth's former business partners, seeking redemption, approached Sophia with confidential documents that detailed Elizabeth's most damning schemes. These records not only supported Sophia's case, but revealed illegal activities that could lead to criminal charges. Sophia hesitated. "If we use this, she won't just lose her empire. She could go to prison." Elliot looked at her, his expression resolute. "She's never hesitated to destroy lives for her gain. It's time she faced the consequences." The court ruled overwhelmingly in Sophia and Elliot's favor, rejecting Elizabeth's appeals and awarding damages for the false accusations against Elliot's gallery. The victory was bittersweet, as the judge referred the case to criminal investigators for further review. Outside the courthouse, Sophia addressed the crowd of reporters. "This isn't just about a legal victory," she said. "It's about accountability and ensuring no one else suffers the way we have. My father's legacy deserved better, and so does this city." With Elizabeth's empire in shambles and her legal battles far from over, Sophia and Elliot focused on the future. Elliot's gallery flourished, attracting national attention for its innovative exhibits. Sophia expanded her foundation, offering grants to young artists and entrepreneurs. One evening, as they walked through the newly renovated gallery, Elliot paused before a blank wall. "What should we put here?" he asked. Sophia smiled, her eyes glinting with inspiration. "How about a mural? Something bold and unapologetic, a testament to everything we've been through." Elliot grinned. "I'll get started tomorrow." The echoes of the courtroom victory reverberated through the city. But for Sophia and Elliot, the battle had only reinforced their resolve to create something meaningful from the chaos Elizabeth had wrought. The Harrington name was no longer a shield of privilege. It was a platform for transformation. The pair stood at the precipice of a new chapter, ready to reshape their legacy and carve out a future that honored the values they had fought to uphold. Elliot's gallery quickly became a beacon for underrepresented artists. The spotlight brought by the trial amplified his work, drawing attention from art enthusiasts and collectors alike. Critics who once dismissed him as a fringe muralist now lauded his raw and emotional storytelling through visual art. His latest piece, Shadows of Power, depicted the haunting grip of corruption and resilience against adversity, earning him a feature in a prestigious New York art magazine. "Your work speaks volumes, Elliot," said Miranda Fields, a celebrated curator who visited the gallery. "It's not just art, it's activism." Sophia, standing beside him during the exhibit, squeezed his hand. "See? I told you the world would recognize what I've always seen in you." Elliot smiled, his humility grounding him despite the success. "I couldn't have done this without you." Meanwhile, Sophia launched her father's dream project, a foundation to support struggling artists and small business owners. Naming it the Harrington Legacy Initiative, she poured her energy into building a network of mentors, donors, and collaborators who shared her vision. The foundation offered grants, workshops, and opportunities for budding entrepreneurs and creatives. One particular initiative, Canvas and Community, paired artists with underserved neighborhoods to create murals that told local stories. The first mural in the program was unveiled in Brooklyn, and it quickly became a symbol of unity and hope. "You've given us something beautiful," said a local community leader at the unveiling ceremony. "This isn't just paint on a wall. It's a reminder that we matter." Sophia blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the impact. "This is just the beginning," she promised. While Sophia and Elliot thrived, Elizabeth's empire began to crumble. Former allies abandoned her, fearing association with the legal scandal. Her remaining assets were tied up in lawsuits, and she found herself increasingly isolated. Even her penthouse, once a symbol of her dominance, became a gilded cage. One afternoon, Elizabeth met with her lawyer, Richard. His usually confident demeanor was replaced with hesitation. "We've exhausted every appeal," he admitted. "And with the criminal investigation underway, your position is tenuous at best." Elizabeth's icy composure cracked for a moment. "They've turned my empire into rubble," she hissed. "I built everything from nothing, and now they're tearing it apart." "Perhaps it's time to reconsider your approach," Richard suggested delicately. "Rebuild your image. Show remorse." Elizabeth's laugh was bitter. "Remorse doesn't rebuild fortunes." Amid their growing success, Sophia received an unexpected letter from her estranged cousin, Margot. The two hadn't spoken in years, their relationship fractured by family politics and misunderstandings. But the letter was an olive branch, offering an apology and a willingness to reconnect. "You should meet with her," Elliot encouraged. "Family isn't perfect, but sometimes it's worth the effort." Sophia agreed, and their reunion over coffee was both awkward and cathartic. Margot revealed hidden family stories, including anecdotes about Sophia's father that she had never known. "He always believed in you," Margot said, her voice soft. "He wanted you to find your own path, even if it wasn't the one Elizabeth had planned." The conversation left Sophia with a newfound sense of clarity and purpose. With their individual projects flourishing, Sophia and Elliot faced the challenge of balancing their professional ambitions with their personal lives. Late nights at the gallery and foundation often left them drained, but they made a pact to prioritize their relationship. One evening, Elliot surprised Sophia with a candlelit dinner at the gallery. The space was transformed into an intimate retreat, with soft music playing in the background and her favorite dishes on the table. "I know we've been running on fumes lately," Elliot said, taking her hand, "but I don't want us to forget why we started this journey together." Sophia smiled, her heart full. "You always know how to bring me back to center." They toasted to their partnership, both on and off the battlefield of life. As autumn settled over New York, Sophia and Elliot found solace in the simple joys of their brownstone. Weekend mornings were spent sipping coffee on the stoop, watching the world go by. Their neighbors, once skeptical of their whirlwind relationship, now stopped to chat and offer warm smiles. One Saturday, as they walked through a nearby park, Elliot paused to sketch a scene of children playing under the falling leaves. Sophia watched him with admiration, her own mind buzzing with ideas for her next initiative. "This feels right," she said softly. "Us, here, building something real." Elliot looked up from his sketch pad, his expression warm. "It's more than I ever dreamed of." As the year progressed, the couple began to lay the groundwork for a joint project, a community art and business incubator. Combining their expertise, they envisioned a space where artists and entrepreneurs could collaborate, learn, and grow. The first step was securing funding. Sophia's connections in the philanthropic world proved invaluable, and Elliot's growing reputation attracted interest from influential investors. At a fundraising gala for the incubator, Sophia delivered a heartfelt speech. "This isn't just about art or business," she said, her voice resonating with passion. "It's about creating opportunities for people to write their own stories, to build legacies that matter." The room erupted in applause, and by the end of the night, they had surpassed their fundraising goal. Late one night, Sophia and Elliot stood in the gallery, gazing at the mural they had commissioned to commemorate their journey. It depicted a phoenix rising from the ashes, surrounded by symbols of resilience and transformation. "It's perfect," Sophia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Elliot wrapped an arm around her. "Just like us." As they turned off the gallery lights and stepped into the cool night air, the world around them seemed full of endless possibilities. Their battle scars had become badges of honor, and their legacy was one they would continue to build together. The aftermath of Elizabeth's final attempts to disrupt their lives left Sophia and Elliot standing on firmer ground. Their hard-fought victories, both in court and in life, were bittersweet reminders of the lengths they had gone to protect their dreams. Yet, as the dust settled, new challenges arose, not in the form of external threats, but in the quiet, complex work of healing old wounds and nurturing personal growth. The invitation arrived in an envelope of thick ivory paper, the handwriting elegant and unfamiliar. It was from Margot, Sophia's cousin, who had been estranged from the Harrington family for years. The letter offered an apology for past misunderstandings and an olive branch for reconciliation. Sophia hesitated. Memories of Margot's sharp words during a long-forgotten family feud resurfaced. Yet there was something about the letter's tone, earnest, regretful, that nudged her toward acceptance. "Should I go?" Sophia asked Elliot as they sat on their living room sofa. Elliot took her hand. I think you should. Family is complicated, but it's worth trying to mend what's broken. The meeting with Margot was awkward at first. The silence is heavy with years of estrangement. But as they shared coffee and laughter over childhood memories, the walls between them began to crumble. I always envied your courage, Margot admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. You walked away from the Harrington empire, and I stayed even when I knew it was suffocating me. Sophia reached across the table, her own voice soft. You can still find your way, Margot. It's never too late. The conversation sparked a newfound kinship, one that would grow into a strong support system for both women in the years to come. Elliot, now a celebrated artist, faced his own moment of self-reflection. His gallery was thriving, his murals graced walls across the city, and invitations to speak at art symposiums poured in. Yet he felt a lingering sense of inadequacy. I've spent so long proving myself to others, he confided to Sophia one evening. But what if I lose the spark that got me here? Sophia smiled knowingly. That spark isn't something you lose, Elliot. It's who you are. Encouraged by her words, Elliot began exploring new styles of art, blending abstract and realism to tell stories of resilience and hope. His latest piece, Threads of Light, captured the interwoven lives of people across the city, each thread representing a story of struggle and triumph. Sophia's foundation, the Harrington Legacy Initiative, was growing rapidly. The success of programs like Canvas and Community attracted national attention, with donors eager to fund its expansion. But the rapid growth brought its own set of challenges. One evening, as Sophia reviewed financial reports at her desk, she sighed in frustration. We're stretched thin, Elliot. The demand is overwhelming, and I don't want to risk losing the personal touch that makes this work meaningful. Elliot knelt beside her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. You've built something incredible, Sophia. It's okay to ask for help. Delegating doesn't mean losing control. It means trusting others to carry the torch with you. Taking his advice, Sophia recruited a diverse team of directors, including Margot, whose expertise in nonprofit management proved invaluable. Together, they launched new initiatives, including an apprenticeship program for young artists and entrepreneurs. To honor the foundation's accomplishments, Sophia organized a gala at a historic Brooklyn warehouse, transformed into a dazzling event space adorned with Elliot's murals. The evening was a testament to the power of community, with speeches from program beneficiaries who shared how the foundation had changed their lives. One young artist, a shy teenager named Marcus, stood on stage, clutching a microphone. Before this program, I didn't think someone like me could ever succeed, he said, his voice trembling. But now I believe in myself. Thank you, Miss Harrington, for seeing something in me. The room erupted into applause, and Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. Marcus's words reminded her why she had fought so hard to defy her mother's expectations. Amid the whirlwind of their professional lives, Sophia and Elliot made a conscious effort to prioritize their relationship. They carved out time for quiet evenings, exploring new neighborhoods, and rediscovering the city that had brought them together. One Sunday afternoon, they strolled through Central Park, the crisp autumn air filled with the scent of fallen leaves. As they watched a street performer play the violin, Elliot turned to Sophia with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever think about what's next for us? He asked. Sophia raised an eyebrow playfully. You mean, besides conquering the art and philanthropy worlds? Elliot chuckled, then grew serious. I mean us. A family, maybe. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The idea had lingered in the back of her mind, but hearing Elliot voice it filled her with both excitement and apprehension. "Let's take it one step at a time," she said, her smile reassuring. "But I love the thought of building a future with you." As the year drew to a close, Sophia and Elliot found themselves reflecting on their journey. One evening, they sat in the gallery, surrounded by the artwork that had come to define their shared vision. "I never imagined we'd end up here," Sophia said, her voice filled with wonder. "Not after everything we've been through." Elliot reached for her hand, his eyes warm. "We didn't just end up here, Sophia. We built this together." Their conversation turned to the future, their plans growing bolder and more ambitious. They spoke of expanding the foundation, mentoring the next generation, and using their platforms to inspire change. On New Year's Eve, the couple hosted a small gathering at their brownstone, surrounded by close friends and foundation supporters. As the clock struck midnight, Sophia and Elliot stood on the rooftop, watching the city lights twinkle below. "Here's to healing, growth, and everything we've yet to create," Sophia said, raising her glass. "To us," Elliot replied, his voice steady with conviction. "And to the legacy we're building." They clinked glasses, their hearts full of hope for the future. Together, they had turned their pain into purpose, their struggles into strength. And as the fireworks lit up the sky, they knew their journey was far from over. It was only just beginning. Elizabeth's mask of confidence faltered for a brief moment before she recovered. "You think you've won, don't you? Oh, this world isn't kind to idealists, Sophia. It rewards those who are willing to do whatever it takes." "That's where you're wrong," Sophia said, her voice steady. "This world is changing, and people like you are being held accountable." The following morning, Elizabeth's penthouse was raided by authorities, armed with warrants for her arrest. As she was led away in handcuffs, journalists swarmed the scene, capturing the moment that marked the end of her reign. Sophia and Elliot watched the news from their brownstone, a mix of relief and sadness washing over them. Despite everything, Elizabeth was still Sophia's mother, and the weight of that truth lingered heavily. In the weeks that followed, Sophia and Elliot worked to repair the damage Elizabeth had tried to inflict. They focused on expanding their gallery and foundation, ensuring that their work would stand as a testament to resilience and integrity. The gallery hosted a special exhibit titled "Rise Above," featuring artwork from underprivileged artists who had benefited from Sophia's programs. Each piece told a story of triumph over adversity, echoing the journey Sophia and Elliot had undertaken. On a quiet evening, Sophia and Elliot sat together in the gallery, surrounded by the vibrant murals and paintings that symbolized their shared vision. Sophia traced her fingers along a canvas, her thoughts drifting. "Do you think she ever regrets it?" she asked softly. Elliot placed an arm around her shoulders. "Maybe, but even if she doesn't, that's not our burden to carry." Sophia nodded, her gaze steady. "You're right. Our focus is here, on what we're building." As they turned off the gallery lights and stepped outside, the city buzzed with life around them. They had faced their greatest challenges and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. The crisp morning air in Brooklyn felt charged with anticipation. The brownstone where Sophia and Elliot had built their lives was abuzz with activity. Today marked the grand reopening of the gallery, an event that symbolized not only a new chapter for their work, but also the culmination of their journey together. Sophia stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress. It was simple yet elegant, a reflection of how far she had come from the glitz and superficiality of her mother's galas. Elliot entered, wearing a tailored suit, an unusual but welcome departure from his paint-splattered jeans. "You look stunning," he said, his voice soft. Sophia smiled, a mixture of excitement and nerves. "And you clean up pretty well yourself." As they prepared to leave, their phones buzzed with messages of support. The community that had rallied around them was eager to celebrate this milestone. From local artists to philanthropists, the guest list was as eclectic as the artwork on display. The gallery was a hive of activity. Guests mingled, sipping champagne and marveling at the curated pieces. Each artwork told a story of struggle, resilience, and triumph. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a massive mural that Elliot and Sophia had painted together, a vibrant tribute to their journey. As the crowd gathered for the official ribbon cutting, Sophia stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. Her heart raced, but she steadied herself, looking out at the sea of supportive faces. "Today isn't just about reopening this gallery," she began. "It's about celebrating the power of art and community. Each piece you see here represents a story, a voice that might have otherwise gone unheard. This gallery isn't just ours, it's yours. It's for every dreamer, every fighter, and every believer." The crowd erupted in applause, and as Sophia cut the ribbon, a wave of emotion washed over her. This was more than a gallery. It was a symbol of hope. As the evening progressed, Elliot led Sophia to a quieter corner of the gallery. The hum of conversations and laughter faded as he turned to her, his expression earnest. "Sophia," he began, reaching into his pocket. "This gallery, this life we've built, it wouldn't mean half as much without you. You've challenged me, inspired me, and shown me what it means to truly live. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. Sophia's breath caught, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "1,000 times, yes." Cheers erupted as their friends and family realized what had just happened. The gallery filled with applause and celebration as the couple embraced, their love shining brighter than ever. Later that night, Sophia stood once more at the microphone, Elliot by her side. She took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. "This journey has taught us so much about resilience, love, and the power of community," she said. "We've faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, but we overcame them together. And now, we look forward to building a future that uplifts others." She gestured to the mural behind her, its bold colors and intricate patterns, a testament to their shared vision. "This piece is called A New Dawn. It represents not just our story, but the stories of everyone who has dared to dream and fight for something better." The crowd rose to their feet, the applause thunderous. In that moment, Sophia and Elliot felt the weight of their struggles lift, replaced by a profound sense of fulfillment and purpose. As the guests departed, Sophia and Elliot lingered in the gallery, their hands intertwined. They talked about their plans for the future, expanding the foundation, hosting more community workshops, and creating spaces where underprivileged artists could thrive. Their dreams were ambitious, but they knew they had the strength and support to achieve them. Together, they had proven that even in the face of adversity, love and determination could create something beautiful. The gallery was awash in warm morning light. The day had finally arrived. Sophia and Elliot's wedding. Unlike the grandiose events Elizabeth Harrington had orchestrated in the past, this ceremony was a reflection of the couple's journey, heartfelt, intimate, and grounded in love. Friends, family, and members of the community gathered in the transformed gallery space, surrounded by artwork that spoke to resilience, creativity, and unity. Sophia stood in front of a full-length mirror, her simple yet elegant gown flowing like water as she turned to admire the intricate lace detailing. Her best friend, Clara, adjusted the veil with a smile. "You look like a dream," Clara said, stepping back to admire her work. Sophia laughed, her nerves evident. "I feel like I'm in one." "More like you've built one," Clara countered. "This isn't just a wedding, Sophia. It's a celebration of everything you and Elliot have accomplished." Meanwhile, in a smaller room, Elliot fumbled with his tie. His brother, Sam, smirked as he stepped in to help. "Nervous," Sam teased. "A little," Elliot admitted. "But it's the good kind of nervous. Like starting a mural. You don't know exactly how it'll turn out, but you trust the process." When the time came, guests settled into their seats. The air buzzed with anticipation as a string quartet began to play. Sophia's breath hitched as she took her first step down the aisle, her arm looped through her cousin Margot's. Elliot stood at the altar, his eyes shining with emotion as they locked onto hers. The ceremony was a blend of tradition and personal touches. A local poet read an original piece about love and perseverance, while the couple's favorite jazz band played softly in the background. When it was time to exchange vows, Elliot spoke first. His voice wavered but grew steadier with each word. "Sophia, you came into my life like a storm. Messy, unpredictable, and utterly unforgettable. You challenged me to dream bigger, to stand taller, and to believe in the impossible. I promise to honor you, support you, and love you every day as we build our masterpiece together." Tears streamed down Sophia's cheeks as she responded. "Elliot, you've shown me that love isn't about perfection. It's about partnership, about finding strength in each other's flaws and building something beautiful. You are my anchor, my muse, and my greatest adventure. I promise to stand by your side, no matter what comes our way." As they exchanged rings, applause erupted, the love in the room palpable. The reception was held in the gallery's main hall. Tables adorned with wildflowers and soft candles filled the space, each centerpiece featuring a small piece of art created by a local student. Laughter and music echoed as guests danced, shared stories, and indulged in the farm-to-table feast that Sophia had carefully planned. Among the highlights was a heartfelt toast from Michael, who had grown close to both Sophia and Elliot. "To my sister, who has taught me the meaning of resilience," Michael began, raising his glass, "and to Elliot, who reminds us all that art has the power to transform lives. You've built more than a gallery. You've built a home, a community, and a legacy. Here's to the future." As the night wore on, Sophia and Elliot took a moment to unveil a special project, a mural they had worked on together, titled Legacy of Love. It depicted a vibrant tree with deep roots and sprawling branches, symbolizing growth, connection, and the journey they had shared. "This piece isn't just about us," Sophia said, addressing the crowd. "It's about everyone who believed in us, who stood by us when things were difficult. It's about building a future that honors the past while daring to dream of something greater." The mural's reveal brought many to tears, and guests lined up to take photos with the couple in front of it. As the party wound down, Sophia and Elliot stole away to the rooftop of the gallery. The city skyline shimmered in the distance, a perfect backdrop to their quiet moment together. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" Sophia asked, leaning into Elliot's shoulder. "Not in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "But now, I can't imagine life any other way." They stood in comfortable silence, the weight of their journey lifting as they looked toward the future. In the weeks following their wedding, Sophia and Elliot threw themselves into their shared dreams. The foundation, now called Harrington and Carson Initiative for the Arts, expanded its reach, offering grants and mentorship programs to struggling artists nationwide. The gallery continued to thrive, hosting exhibits and community events that brought people together. Sophia also began working on a memoir about her journey, a project that combined her love for storytelling with her desire to inspire others. Elliot, meanwhile, started a new series of murals that would be displayed in public spaces across New York City, each one reflecting the themes of resilience, love, and community. 1 year later, Sophia and Elliot stood outside the gallery, now a thriving hub of creativity and connection. A crowd had gathered for the unveiling of a new installation, a rotating exhibit that showcased work from underprivileged artists across the country. As the couple cut the ribbon together, Sophia looked at Elliot, her eyes brimming with gratitude and love. "We did it," she whispered. "No," Elliot corrected, smiling. "We're just getting started." The camera panned upward, capturing the mural of the vibrant tree and the couple standing below it, their hands intertwined. Above them, the gallery's new sign read, "Legacy of Love." As we close this chapter of Sophia and Elliot's incredible journey, we're reminded that love and resilience can conquer even the toughest challenges. But what about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for what you believed in, no matter the odds? We'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation alive. Your voice matters. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. There are more heartwarming and inspiring stories waiting for you. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us next time for another unforgettable tale. Together, let's explore stories that move us, challenge us, and remind us what it means to truly live. We'll see you soon.